Peace. Alright, let's do some more reading. Part 2. Chapter 1.2. Tips for reading and final minor notes. Don't read this book like a normal book. It's very short and you should be able to finish it within a couple of hours. Most people benefit from highlighting or taking notes and usually recommend rereading it a few times to fully solidify the lessons. Why the Hack Book? Because Alan Carr has long since passed away and the institutions he's formed don't list internet pornography as one of the addictions they provide treatment for. I don't gain monetarily or otherwise. Throughout this book, myself, the original hack author, and Alan Carr will appear transparently in order to provide you with a unique and a compelling method to easily and painlessly quit. A number of communities exist for the Hack Book as well, but would recommend checking them out only after you've finished reading this book. Quick reminder, do not jump chapters. I'd wish you luck, but as you'll soon come to learn, you don't need it. Good vibes from the Hack author. Okay. I feel like I was going to add something there, now I can't remember. So, let's keep moving. Chapter 2, the easy method. This book's objective is directing you into a new frame of mind, in contrast to the usual method of stopping, whereby you start off with the feeling of climbing Mount Everest and spend the next few weeks craving and feeling deprived. You start right away with a feeling of elation, as if cured of a terrible disease. From then on, the further you go through life, the more you will look at this period of time and wonder how you ever used porn in the first place. You will look at other porn users with pity as opposed to envy. Provided that you're not someone who had never become addicted, or reading for your significant other, or had quit, or is in the fasting days of a porn diet, it's essential to keep using until you have finished the book completely. This may appear to be a contradiction, and this introduction to continue masturbating to porn causes more objection than any other. But as you read through, your desire to use porn will gradually be reduced. Take this instruction seriously. Attempting to quit early will not benefit you. I can understand where he comes from with that as well. Oh, what I was going to add before is Fraser has added a few bits because I remember in the video he wasn't sure Alan Carr had passed away, so that bit's definitely been added. So that's pretty cool. Respect to him for going back to it. And updating it, improving it. Okay. Many don't finish the book because they feel they have something to give up. Some even deliberately only reading one line per day in order to postpone the evil event. Look at it this way. What have you got to lose? If you don't stop at the end of the book, you're no worse off than you are now. It's by definition a Pascal's wager, a bet taken where you have nothing to lose and high chances of large gains. Incidentally, if you haven't watched porn for a few days or weeks, but aren't sure whether you're a porn user, ex-user, or a non-user, or you find your desire to watch porn has dwindled as you're absorbing the material, then don't use porn to masturbate whilst reading. In fact, you're already a non-user. You have to let your brain catch up with your body. By the end of the book, you'll be a happy non-user. Easy Peasy is the complete opposite of the normal method, where one lists the considerable disadvantages of porn and says, if only I can go long enough without porn, eventually the desire will go and I can enjoy a life again, free of slavery. This is the logical way to go about it, with thousands stopping every day using this method. However, it's very difficult to succeed for the following reasons. Stopping PMO isn't the real problem. Every time you finish your session, you stop using it. You may have powerful reasons on the first day of your once-in-4 porn diet to say, I don't want to use porn or even masturbate anymore. All users do, and the reasons are far more powerful than you can possibly imagine. The real problem is day 2, 10, or 10,000, when in a weak moment you'll have just one peak, once another, and suddenly you're an addict again. I'll quickly add, I remember making this mistake last New Year's Eve. or the one before last, where I was like, oh, I'll have one, even though I'd gone like 2 or 3 months without it, which was the longest ever, I believe, at the time. Yeah, it was the longest at the time I'd gone without it. And I stayed in New Year's Eve, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna get takeout, watch porn, almost like a goodbye to last habits, like because of the cut off to start fresh in New Year. I ended up carrying it on all the way through January. So like one slip, like it is a drug. One slip can really do that, which is why I'm proud that this January 2025 I've actually stuck to not watching any. Okay. Awareness of the health risks generates more fear, making it more difficult to stop. Tell a user it's destroying their virility, and the first thing they'll do is reach for something to surge their dopamine, a cigarette, alcohol, or even firing up the browser to search for porn. Now, I can vouch that I've experienced that, so I know you lot have as well. It is true. You get a moment of panic about the effects it's causing, and you actually go to it as comfort. But yeah, all reasons for stopping actually make it harder. This is due to 2 reasons. First, we are continually being forced to give up our little friend or some prop, vice, or pleasure, whichever way the user perceives it. Second, they create a blind. We do not masturbate for the reasons we should stop. The real question is, why do we want or need to do it? With Easy Peasy, we initially forget the reasons we'd like to stop, face the porn problem, and ask ourselves the following questions. What is porn doing for me? Am I actually even enjoying it? Do I really need to go through my whole life sabotaging my mind and body? And that's pretty much that pillar I spoke about with Easy Peasy. Like that's the one that can go through any addiction. It's just being, like I said, objective about it, not letting your feelings or emotions get involved. Okay. The beautiful truth is that all porn does absolutely nothing for you whatsoever. Let me make it quite clear. It's not that the disadvantages of being a user outweigh the advantages. It's that there are 0 advantages to looking at pornography. Most users find it necessary to rationalise why they use porn, but the reasons they come up with are all fallacies and illusions. First, we'll remove these fallacies and illusions. In fact, you'll soon realise there is nothing to give up. Not only that, there are marvellous positive gains from being a non-PMOer, with well-being and happiness only 2 of these gains. Once illusions that life will never be quite as enjoyable without porn is removed, realising that not only is life just as enjoyable without it, but infinitely more so, and once feelings of being deprived or missing out are eradicated, we'll go back to reconsider increased well-being and happiness and the dozens of other reasons for quitting porn. These realizations will become positive additional aids to help you achieve what you really desire, enjoying your life free from the slavery of porn addiction. Chapter 3. Why is it difficult to stop? All users feel something evil has possessed them. In the early days, it's a simple question of, I will stop, just not today. Eventually, we progress to believing we haven't got enough willpower to stop, or that there's something inherent in porn we must have in order to enjoy life. Porn addiction is like clawing our way out of a slippery pit. As we near the top, we see the sunshine, and find ourselves sliding back down as our mood dips. Eventually we open our browser, and as we masturbate, we feel awful. Ask a user if you could go back to the time before you became hooked. With the knowledge you have now, would you have started using porn? No way, would be the reply. Ask the confirmed user, someone who defends internet porn, which is grim, and doesn't believe it causes injury to the brain, or downregulation of dopamine receptors, do you encourage your children to use porn? No way, is again the reply. Porn is an extraordinary enigma. As I said previously, the problem isn't explaining why it's easy to stop, it's explaining why it's difficult to stop. The real problem is explaining why anyone does it after getting insights on neurological damage. Part of the reason we start is because of the other tens of millions already into it. Yet all of these people wish they hadn't started in the first place. Facts. Telling us like it's like living in second gear. We don't quite believe they're not enjoying it, as we associate it with freedom or being sex educated, and work hard to become hooked ourselves. We then spend the rest of our lives telling others not to do it and trying to kick the habit ourselves, often thinking we're unique in this. I've been there a few years back. We also spend a significant proportion of our time feeling hopeless and miserable. Educating ourselves with the supernormal makes us prefer and long for these cold images, even when warm, real ones are available. Through the constant surge and fall of dopamine induced by PMO, we sentence ourselves to a lifetime of isolation, irritability, anger, stress, fatigue, and sexual dysfunction. Using porn, with its absence of the best parts of sex and connection, we end up feeling miserable and guilty. In fact, reading about internet pornography's addictive and destructive capabilities here and on other sites makes us even more nervous and hopeless. What sort of hobby is it that when you're doing it, you wish you weren't, and when you aren't, you crave it? Users despise themselves every time they read about hypofrontality and desensitization. Every time they use behind their trusting partner's back, and every time they can't bring themselves to exercise after a daytime session. An otherwise intelligent and rational human being spends all of their days in contempt. But worst of all, what do users get from having to endure life with these awful black shadows at the back of their mind? Absolutely nothing. You might be thinking, that's all very well, I know this, but once you're hooked on these things, it's very difficult to stop. But why is it so difficult to stop? Some say it's because of the powerful withdrawal symptoms, but as you'll soon come to learn, the actual withdrawal symptoms are very mild in fact, and this is evident when you consider that many PMOs have lived and died without realizing they were addicts. Some say internet porn is free and hence humankind should claim this biological bonanza, but this is untrue. It's addictive and acts just like any drug. Ask a user that swears they only enjoy erotica, like Playboy magazines, if they've ever crossed the line to unsafe porn. And if they are completely honest, they would confess about the times they had rationalized crossing that line, rather than not using anything at all. And isn't that true for like any drug addict? They'll do whatever to get the hit. Enjoyment has nothing to do with it either. I enjoy crayfish, but I never got to the point where I had to have crayfish every day. With other things in life, we enjoy them whilst we're doing them, but we don't sit around feeling deprived when we're not. Some say, it's educational. So how has it made you grow as a person? It's status of sexual satisfaction. So why does it isolate you and make you feel insatiable cravings? It's a feeling of release. Release from the stresses of real life. Okay, for an hour before it all comes crashing back on you. And what stresses has it solved? It helps me sleep. So why can others sleep just fine without it? There are many scientifically demonstrated methods to fix sleep and more. So I'll just quickly side note that Dr. Julie Lay, I believe, on YouTube. I watched one a couple of days ago of her, and she was saying that it might help you fall asleep quicker, but it does actually affect your REM, so you'll have worse sleep. And again, that's like relevant with any drug. See the common theme here. Weed is the same. You might fall asleep quicker, but your sleep will be worse. You'll wake up groggy. You might wake up through the night, which always used to happen to me. Okay. Many believe that porn relieves boredom. But boredom is a frame of mind. Porn will habituate you to novelty seeking in no time, causing you to become increasingly bored until you finally participate in that wild goose chase for just the right clip, becoming increasingly wired to seek anything that evokes novelty, strong emotion, and eventually outrageous shock value. Some say they only do it because they're friends and everyone they know does it. If so, pray that your friends don't start cutting their heads off to cure a headache. Most users who think about it come to conclude that it's just a habit. This is not really an explanation, but having discounted all the usual rational explanations, it appears to be the only remaining excuse. Unfortunately, it's equally illogical. Every day of our lives we change habits, some of them very enjoyable, yet we've been brainwashed to believe that PMO is a habit and that habits are difficult to break. And again, let me just bookmark that. Me with gaming, I've gamed my whole life and I love gaming. Or I go through periods of feeling nothing towards it. And I can go over a month without it. It's easy. It is just easy to quit. I won't have cravings for it. Different. How can gaming that's actually enjoyable not create cravings? But porn that's not enjoyable, they are not the words. You're not having fun watching it. It's just pure shock. Anyway, are habits difficult to break? Drivers in the US are in the habit of driving on the right-hand side of the road, yet when travelling overseas they break the habit with hardly any aggravation whatsoever. And when you get a new job, you take on a different routine, so your habits change. These may take some getting used to, but it's nothing like breaking a lifelong struggle with porn addiction. We make and break habits every day of our lives, so why do we find it difficult to break a habit that makes us feel deprived when we don't have it, guilty when we do, one that we would love to break anyway, when all we have to do is stop using it? The answer is that porn isn't habit, it's addiction. That's why it appears to be so difficult to give up. Most users don't understand addiction and believe that they have got some genuine pleasure or crutch from porn. They believe they're making a genuine sacrifice if they quit. The beautiful truth is that once you understand the true nature of porn addiction and the reasons why you use it, you'll stop doing it, just like that. Within 3 weeks, the only mystery will be why you found it necessary to use porn as long as you have, and why you can't persuade other users how nice it is to not be a PMOer. Oh, let me catch a breath. I don't think I should have had that coffee. Okay, chapter 3.1, The Sinister Trap. Internet porn is a subtle and sinister trap that man and nature have combined to devise. Some of us are even warned about the dangers, but we can't believe how we aren't enjoying it. But what gets us into it in the first place? Typically, it's free samples from amateurs and professionals who share. That's how the trap is sprung. If instead, it warned us of the dangers of what we were getting into before even making that first peek, then the alarm bells would scream. But these bells don't scream. Perhaps it's the shocking nature of the many clips that reassures our young minds we'll never become hooked, thinking because we don't enjoy them, we can stop whenever we want to. Or maybe the seeming innocence of soft material doesn't trigger any alarm bells, much like skillful weavings that a con artist can play to direct our mind. As intelligent human beings, we then understand why half the adult population was systematically addicted to something cutting down our very potential to perform what we're viewing. Curiosity brings us closer to the doorstep of addiction, but we don't dare to click on the thumbnails we're glancing at, fearing that they'd make us ill or send us down into a perilous and immoral pathway. And if we accidentally click on one, often our only desire is to get away from the page as soon as possible, while at the same time, desperately curious even more. Once this process has started, we are trapped. From now on, we spend the rest of our lives trying to understand why we do it, telling our children not to start, and at odd times trying to escape ourselves. The trap is designed such that we try and stop only due to an incident, whether sexual performance, loss of a career or a relationship, shortage of drive, or just plain feeling like a leper. As soon as we stop, we have more stress due to withdrawal pangs, and with the method we relied on to remove that stress now unavailable. Our resolve for quitting then proves to be shaky. After a few days of torture, we convince ourselves that we've picked the wrong time to quit, deciding we'll wait for periods without stress, which upon arriving removes our reason for initially stopping. Of course, that period will never fully arrive, and we begin to believe that our lives tend to become more and more stressful. We leave the protection of our parents and the stresses of work, homemaking, mortgages, buying shelter, and raising children begins to crowd our lives, but this is an illusion. The most stressful part of any creature's life are actually early childhood and adolescence. We tend to confuse responsibility and stress. A user's life, like a drug addict's, automatically becomes more stressful because porn doesn't relax us or relieve stress, as some try to make us believe. It's just the reverse. Causing us to become more stressed as we continue using, with every guilt-laden late-night aftermath, piling more straw onto the camel's back. Even users who kick the habit, as most do one or more times throughout their lives, can lead perfectly happy lives, yet suddenly become hooked again. Wandering into the pornographic maze, our minds become hazy, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to escape. Many do succeed, only to fall into the sinister trap at a later date. Solving the problem of porn addiction is a riddle. It is complex and difficult. But once you see the answer, it's simple and fun, and you wonder why you didn't think of that. Easy Peasy contains the solution to this puzzle, leading you out of the maze, never wandering in again. All you have to do is follow every instruction to the letter. However, if you take a wrong turn by jumping chapters or blazing through the book at lightning speed without carefully making a deliberate effort on your first time reading, then the rest of the instructions are pointless. Anyone can find it easy to stop, but we must first establish the facts. No, not facts designed to scare you. There's already more than enough information out there. If this was going to stop you, you'd have already stopped. But why do we find it difficult to stop? Answering that requires us to know the real reason we're still using it, boiling down to two factors, which are nature and internet porn, societal brainwashing. Societal brainwashing is just so vital. Porn users are intelligent, rational human beings. They know they're taking enormous future risks, so they spend lots of time rationalizing their habit. Porn users, in their hearts, know they're fools. Knowing they had no need to use porn before becoming hooked, most remember that their first peak was a mix of revulsion and novel curiosity. They then specialize in locating, filtering, and bookmarking sites, working hard to become hooked. Most annoyingly, there's the sense that non-addicts, most women, older guys, and people living in countries where high-speed internet porn is unavailable, aren't missing out on anything, and find the situation laughable. By dismantling these factors in the next chapters, you too will understand the sinister trap. How many chapters are there in this? Oh my god, I wish I didn't check. "33 chapters. I'm on chapter 4, you know. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Chapter 4. Nature, bruv. Internet porn works through hijacking natural reward mechanisms designed to keep you reproducing for as long as possible. Internet porn's instant and highly accessible form keeps the brain rewards mechanism producing dopamine for significantly longer than normally possible. Scientifically, this is called the Coolidge effect, which you might already be aware of. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of wanting with actual pleasure produced by opioids. More dopamine, more opioids, and more action. Without dopamine, actions such as eating don't feel pleasurable and aren't completed, with high fat and sugar foods producing the highest chemical release. Dopamine is also released in response to novelty. With a seemingly infinite amount of pornography available, this floods the limbic system, which is the reward circuit. So the first time you see porn, you act, orgasming and triggering another flood of opioids. Incentivized to get as much dopamine as possible, the brain stores this as a script for easy recall and strengthens neural pathways through the release of a chemical called delta phos-B. Now, the brain calls up these pathways in response to cues such as sexy commercials, alone time, stress, or even feeling a little down, and suddenly you're ready to take a ride on the water slide. Every time this is repeated, more delta phos-B is released, so the water slide is greased, alive, and easier to ride down the next time. The limbic system has a self-correcting system to trim the number of dopamine and opioid receptors when frequent and daily flooding of dopamine is detected. Unfortunately, these receptors are also needed to keep us motivated to handle daily life stresses. Nominal amounts of dopamine produced by natural rewards simply don't compare to porn and aren't as efficiently absorbed by the decreased receptors, leading you into feeling more stressed and irritated than normal. This process is known as desensitization. I feel like I know how to say that word, but reading it is just confusing me. In this cycle, you cross the red line and triggered emotions such as guilt, disgust, embarrassment, anxiety, and fear, which in turn raise dopamine levels even higher and cause the brain to misinterpret these feelings as sexual arousal. Yes, and I believe I mentioned that in part 1. It's not about sexual arousal, or maybe 9 times out of 10 it's not. As time passes, not only is the brain desensitized to previous clips it's seen, but also similar genres and shock level. This lower motivation triggers feelings of lower satisfaction as our brains engage in constant rating, pushing you to find clips to satisfy the hunger. So you seek more novelty, clicking on the amateurish, shock-inducing clip on the home page you confidently said you wouldn't on your first visit. The cooling effect. It's like a picture, essentially showing, how I would show you, but I'm not going to get that. I can't flip it like Snapchat. So hopefully that's showing. So it's just kind of showing how it just stops the cause effect from happening as it naturally would. Like it's just forcing your brain into that overdrive. It's got a little quote underneath that picture. For in the dew of little things, the heart finds its morning and is refreshed. Khalil Gibran. A fleeting feeling of security is all that's needed to get through a rough spot in life. But will your desensitized brain be able to catch that drop of distressor that a non-user's brain is able to use? 100% I noticed that benefit. Dopamine flooding acts like a quick-acting drug, falling quickly and inducing withdrawal pangs. Many users have the illusion these pangs are the terrible trauma they suffer when trying or being forced to stop. In fact, they're primarily mental, since the user is feeling deprived of their pleasure or prop. 4.1. The Little Monster. The actual chemical withdrawal from porn is so subtle that most users have lived and died without realizing they are drug addicts. Many users have a fear of drugs, yet that's exactly what they are, drug addicts. Fortunately, it's an easy drug to kick, but you first need to accept that you are, in fact, addicted. Withdrawal from porn doesn't cause any physical pain and is merely an empty, restless feeling of something missing, which is why many believe it's something to do with sexual desire. Prolonged, this feeling becomes nervousness, insecurity, agitation, low confidence, and irritability. It's like hunger for a poison. Within seconds of engaging in a session, dopamine is supplied and the craving ends, resulting in a feeling of fulfillment as you whiz down the water slide. In the early days, withdrawal pangs and their subsequent relief are so slight we're unaware of them. When we become regular users, we believe it's because we've come to enjoy or gotten into the habit. Truth is that we're already hooked but don't realize it. The little monster is already in our brains, so every once in a while we take trips down the water slide to feed it. All users begin seeking porn for irrational reasons. The only reason anybody continues to use it, whether they're a casual or a heavy user, is to feed that little monster. The whole conundrum is a series of cruel and confusing punishments, but perhaps the most pathetic aspect is the sense of enjoyment a user gets from a session, trying to get back to that sense of peace, tranquility, and confidence their body had before becoming hooked in the first place. 4.2. The annoying alarm. You know that feeling when a neighbour's home alarm's been ringing all day? Or some other minor persistent aggravation. Then the noise suddenly stops and marvellous feelings of peace and tranquility wash over you? This isn't really peace, but the ending of an aggravation. Before starting the next session, our bodies are complete, but then we begin forcing our brains to pump dopamine, and when we're done and it begins to leave, we suffer withdrawal pangs. These aren't physical pain, merely an empty feeling. You aren't even aware it exists, but it's like a dripping tap inside our bodies. Our rational minds don't understand it, but they don't need to. All we know is that we want porn, and when we masturbate, the craving goes. However, the satisfaction is fleeting, because in order to relieve the craving, more porn is required. As soon as you orgasm, the craving starts again, and the trap continues to hold you. A feedback loop unless you break it. The porn trap is similar to wearing tight shoes just to obtain the pleasure of taking them off. There are 3 primary reasons why users can't see it this way. Number 1. From birth, we've been subjected to massive amounts of brainwashing, telling us internet porn is simply another modern development that replaced the print version of porn. This fallacy is packaged with the truth that masturbation isn't harmful, so why shouldn't we believe them? 2. Because physical dopamine withdrawal involves no actual pain, merely an empty, insecure feeling inseparable from hunger and normal stress, this feeling manifests into a porn session, as those are the very times we tend to seek internet porn. We tend to regard this feeling as normal. However, the primary reason users fail to see internet porn in its true light is due to it working back to front. It's when you're not consuming that you suffer the empty feeling. Because the process of getting hooked is incredibly subtle and gradual in the early days, the empty feeling is regarded as normal, and so it isn't blamed on the previous session. The moment the browser is fired up, you begin your session. You get an immediate boost and become less nervous or more relaxed, so internet porn gets the credit. This back to front, reverse process makes all drugs difficult to kick. Imagine the state of panic of a heroin addict without any heroin. Now picture their utter joy when they can finally plunge a needle into their vein. People who aren't addicted to heroin don't suffer that panic feeling, nor can we imagine it. That's the important thing. It's just not even comprehensible in our existence. That's how a non-porn person feels, like they just don't need it. The heroin doesn't relieve the feeling, it causes it. Similarly, non-users don't suffer empty feelings of needing internet porn or panic when they're offline. Non-users can't understand how users possibly obtain pleasure from 2-dimensional videos with muted sounds and abnormal body proportions. Eventually, users can't understand either. We talk about internet porn being relaxed or satisfying, but how can you be satisfied unless you were dissatisfied in the first place? A non-user doesn't suffer from this unsatisfied state, completely relaxed after a no-sex date, while the user isn't until they've satisfied their little monster. Chapter 4.3. A pleasure or a crutch? An important reminder. The main reason that users find it difficult to quit is due to the belief they're giving up a genuine pleasure or crutch. It's essential to understand that you're giving up absolutely nothing whatsoever. The best way to understand the subtleties of the porn trap is comparing it with eating. The habit of regular meals causes us to not feel hungry between, only aware of hunger if the meal is delayed. There's no physical pain, just an empty, insecure feeling recognized as hunger. The process of satisfying our hunger is a very pleasant experience. Pornography appears to be almost identical, but it's not. Like hunger, there's no physical pain, and the reward mechanism behaves in similar ways. But it's this similarity to eating that tricks the user into believing there's a genuine pleasure or crutch. Although eating and porn appear to be very similar, in reality they're exact opposites. You eat to survive and energize your life, whereas porn dims and cuts down your mojo. Food genuinely tastes good, and eating is a genuinely pleasant experience that we enjoy throughout our lives. Porn involves self-sabotaging the happiness receptors, and thus destroying your chances to cope and feel happy. Eating doesn't create hunger and genuinely relieves it, whereas the first porn session starts the craving for dopamine and each subsequent session. Far from relieving it, it ensures suffering for the rest of your life. Is eating a habit? If you think so, try breaking it completely. To describe eating as a habit would be like describing breathing as a habit. Both are essential for survival. It's true that people have the habit of satisfying their hunger at different times with varying types of food, but eating itself isn't habit. Neither is porn. The only reason a user fires up the browser is trying to end the empty feelings the previews created at different times with varying escalating genres. On the internet, porn is frequently referred to as a habit, and for convenience, Easy Peasy also refers to the habit. However, be constantly aware that porn isn't habit, it's drug addiction. When we start to use porn, we have to force ourselves to cope with it. Before we know it, we're escalating into increasingly bizarre and shocking porn. The thrill is in the hunting, not the killing, with dopamine rapidly leaving the body after orgasm, explaining why users want to edge, which is delaying orgasm, through flicking between multiple browser windows and tabs. Chapter 4.1, Crossing the Red Line. As with any other drug, the body tends to develop immunity to the effects of the same old clips, our brain wanting more or something else. After short periods of watching the same clip, it ceases to completely relieve the withdrawal pangs that the previous session created. There's a tug of war occurring in this porn paradise. You want to stay on the safe side of your red line, but your brain is asking you to click on the forbidden fruit clip. You feel better after engaging in the session, but you're more nervous and less relaxed than someone who never started, even though you're living in a supposed porn paradise. This position is even more ridiculous than wearing tight shoes, because as you go through life, an ever-increasing amount of discomfort remains after taking the shoes off. Because the user knows the little monster has to be fed, they themselves decide the time, which tends to be on 4 types of occasions, or a combination of them. Boredom/concentration, 2 complete opposites. Stress or relaxation, 2 complete opposites. What magic drug can suddenly reverse the very effect it had minutes before? The truth is that porn neither relieves boredom and stress, nor provokes concentration and relaxation. If you think about it, what other types of occasions are there in our lives, bar sleep? If you have ideas of toning down to other types of realistic or soft genres of porn, please note that the content of this book applies to all porn: print, webcams, pay-per-view, chat, live shows, etc. OnlyFans. The human body is the most sophisticated object on the planet, but no species, even the lowest amoeba or worm, survives without knowing the difference between food and poison. Through natural selection, our minds and bodies have developed techniques for rewarding actions that multiply and sustain humanity. They're not prepared for supernormal stimuli that are bigger, brighter, and edgier than anything found in nature, since even the most muted two-dimensional image causes us to become aroused. But repeatedly looking at the same image, and you won't be. In real life, checks and balances ensure you do something else, but internet porn has no such limiter, causing you to spend your life in a virtual harem. It's a fallacy that physically and mentally weak people become users, the lucky ones being those who found it at first instance repulsive and are cured for life. Alternatively, you aren't mentally prepared to go through the severe learning process of fighting to get themselves hooked, fears of getting caught or not being technical enough to operate browser privacy settings. Perhaps the most tragic part of this whole business relates to teenagers, skilled in finding material and covering their tracks, who start in increasing number. Enjoying internet porn is an illusion, jumping from genre to genre, merely keeping our novelty monkey within the red line of safe porn genres in order to keep our dopamine fix. Like heroin addicts, all they're really enjoying is the ritual of relieving those pangs. Chapter 4.5, The High from the dance around the red line. Even with the one clip that's lingered on, users constantly teach themselves to filter out the bad and ugly portions of porn clips. Even if it's solo, they still feed that filter on the body parts that appeal to them the most. In fact, some take pleasure in this dance around the red line, finding excuses to declare that they like the soft stuff and are unaddicted to supernormal stimuli. But ask a user who believes they stick to a certain actor or genre, if you cannot get your normal brand of porn and can only obtain an unsafe genre, do you stop masturbating? No way. A user will masturbate to anything. Escalating genres, differences in sex orientation, look-alike performers, dangerous settings, shocking relationships, anything to sate the little monster. I don't know if that's supposed to say satiate. Anyway, to begin with, they taste awful, but given enough time, you'll learn to enjoy them. Users will seek empty fulfillment after having real sex, after a long workday, fever, colds, flu, sore throats, and even during admittance in hospitals. Enjoyment has nothing to do with it. If sex is wanted, it makes no sense to be with your laptop. Some users find it alarming to realise they're drug addicts, and believe this will make it even more difficult to stop. In fact, this is good news for two important reasons. Number one, the reason why most continue using is because although we know the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages, we believe there's something in porn that we actually enjoy, or that it acts like some sort of prop. We're under the illusion that after we stop using there will be a void. Certain situations in our lives have never been quite the same. In fact, porn not only provides nothing, it subtracts. And two, although internet porn is a more powerful trigger for novelty and sex-based dopamine flooding, because of the speed you become hooked, you're never badly hooked. The actual withdrawal pangs are so mild that most users have lived and died without realising they've suffered them. Why is it then that many users find it so difficult to stop, going through months of torture and spending the rest of our lives pining for it at odd times? The answer is the second reason: brainwashing. The neurotransmitter addiction is easy to cope with. Most users going for days without online porn on business trips or travel, unaffected by withdrawal pangs. The little monster is safe in the knowledge you'll open your laptop as soon as you return to your hotel room. You can survive your obnoxious clone and your megalomaniac manager, knowing the fix is there for your taking. Chapter 4.6. The smoker's analogy. A good analogy is that of the cigarette smoker. If they went 10 hours of the day without a cigarette, they'd be tearing their hair out. But many smokers will buy a new car and refrain from smoking in it. Many will visit all theatres, supermarkets, churches, and being unable to smoke causes them no problems. Even on trains and airplanes, there have been no riots. Smokers are almost pleased for someone or something to stop them smoking. Users will automatically refrain from using internet porn in their parents' home during family gatherings and other events of little discomfort. In fact, most users have extended periods during which they abstain without effort. The neurological little monster is easy to cope with, even when you're still addicted. There are millions of users who remain casual users all of their lives, and they're just as addicted as the heavy user. There are even heavy users who've kicked the addiction but have an occasional peak, greasing the water slide to be ridden down at the next dip in mood. As said previously, the actual porn addiction isn't the main problem. It's simply acting as a catalyst to keeping our minds confused over the real problem: brainwashed. Don't think the bad effects of internet porn are exaggerated. However, if anything, they're sadly understated. Occasionally, rumours circulate that neural pathways created are there for life. The right mix of chance and stimulus sending you down the life-ruining water slide again, but these are untrue. Our brains and bodies are miraculous machines, recovering within a matter of weeks. It's never too late to stop. A quick browse of online communities will show you people of all ages rebooting theirs and their partners' lives. As with anything, some do take it to the next level, practicing semen retention, charisma, and through differentiation of the sensory and propagative sides of sex, make their partners happier than ever before. It may be of consolation to lifelong and never users that it's just as easy for them to stop as casual users. And in a peculiar way, it's easier. The further it drags you down, the greater the relief. When I stopped, I went straight to zero and didn't have one bad pang. In fact, the process was actually enjoyable, even during the withdrawal period. But first, we must remove the brainwashing. Okay, and that's on to chapter 5. I'm going to leave it there for today, or for now. Maybe I'll do some more later. Peace.